name's Gordon Beckham. I was a two-sport, all-state athlete, football and baseball. I went to college at UGA. I was a two-time All-American, SEC Player of the Year, runner-up for the Golden Spikes, which is given to the best player in college baseball. That year, 2008, I was drafted 8th overall by the White Sox. And in 59 games, I made it to the big leagues. So less than a year from the time that I was drafted, I was actually playing in the big leagues. And in 2009, when I got to the White Sox, I won Rookie of the Year after only those 59 games. I was the toast of the town of Chicago. I didn't pay for a meal. It was one of those things where I walked in and they said, "Your money's no good here." Tried to pay, couldn't do it. I dated who I wanted, had constant attention, and I had 20 to 30,000 people a night screaming my name and chanting my walk-up song, "Your Love" by the outfield after every big hit. The atmosphere was unbelievable. The stadium was rocking. Everybody knew my name. I couldn't walk out the door with somebody not trying to take a selfie. They expected big things. A lot of expectation with when I got up there, had Rookie of the Year. A lot of crazy things went on. And I was living a movie. I really was. I was up there. It was every kid's dream, right? I mean, playing baseball in the big leagues. What could be better? I was hitting behind World Series hero Scott Podsednik and in front of Hall of Famer Jim Thome and legends Paul Konerko and Jermaine Dye. It did feel like a movie. And it was a total blur. All that stuff that I just said happened within a year or two span. And on the surface, I think you would have thought that my life would have been super successful, super glamorous, and totally fulfilled. I'll never forget, after my rookie year, I went back. I was in Atlanta here. I always came back in the off season. And I was sitting waiting for my friends to go to a Kings of Leon concert. And I remember this feeling, and I just couldn't shake it. After everything I'd ever done, I'd spent all this time working so hard to get to the point that I did. I remember that feeling, and I was sitting there, I'm like, that was it. That was everything that I had ever worked for. And I was like, why am I so unfulfilled? And of course, like any good athlete, I shook that off. Of course it was everything. And I didn't want to admit that emptiness. Fast forward 9 months to July 2010, the All-Star break. A year after I had been crowned Rookie of the Year in the AL with the White Sox, I was hitting 198 at the All-Star break. 198. Below the Mendoza. Got some baseball fans here, I like that. Listen, just months earlier, I'd been on top of the world. And now I had sports psychologists telling me how to think. My confidence was completely shaken. It was the first time I had ever failed consistently in my life. And I had to do it in front of 20 to 30,000 people a night. I salvaged the second half of that year by hitting 310, but mentally, the damage had kind of been done. I learned I could struggle. It never happened before, and I had to go figure it out in front of a lot of people. The devil told me, maybe I'm not as good as I thought. Maybe I'm a fluke. Maybe I'm a one-hit wonder. The devil kept whispering those things in my mind. After that, success became my God. It was everything. It was the most important thing. It was the only thing. My identity was wrapped up in my batting average, stats, acclaim, anything that you could think of. I effectively replaced God with baseball success. And the devil's subtle, right? I mean, it's not one of those things where he shows up with horns and pitchfork. He generally will show up and he'll just shift your priorities just a little bit. And then over a long period of time, those priorities shift so far away from God that he's got you. Baseball became my little G God. Steve taught me the little G. Backing up, I grew up in a Christian household. We went to church. We prayed before dinner. My parents tried to make Christ a priority. But for me, faith wasn't an ongoing conversation. It didn't feel like a daily relationship. And as a good athlete, sports kind of became my world. My focus was be the best athlete, not follow Jesus. If you can believe all the stuff that I told you about how well I did in high school and in college, you wouldn't believe this, but I always felt overlooked and underrated in high school and in college. I was always hearing, how great is that other guy? That shortstop's better than you. And that was really the driver for me that fueled my internal drive, right? I'm better than that guy. He's not as good as me. It was a constant comparison in my mind. I wanted to compete with anybody out there, and I wanted to be better than them. That really turned my focus inward, right? And it helped shut God out. And that's what became the basis for letting sports and stats and everything become everything. I love to escape to the outdoors, away from baseball. That's what I do. I connect like a lot of guys, getting in the woods and hunting and being quiet. My dad and I would go down in the fall and all year really and camp out and build a fire and spend some time together. That was Middle Georgia, and that was my happy place. I mean, high school, college, even when I would come back from the season, I couldn't wait to get down there and get quiet. That was really important to me. I wanted to find a way to escape all the expectation that I had in Chicago, or all the times I had to speak after the game about when I'm going to start hitting and when am I going to do this. That was my way of getting away. I couldn't wait to sit in a deer stand. And God would later use that as part of my story. But back to baseball, I was always kind of chasing that rookie year praise. When I showed up in Chicago, the back of the Sun-Times had a big picture of me, and it had the headline, "The Savior is Here." The pressure I felt was immense, and initially I handled that really well because I didn't know what I was doing. I was a kid, and I just showed up and I was just playing baseball. But that grew and grew as going into the off-season after Rookie of the Year, and then the White Sox kind of made me their poster child. Problem is, my bat got worse. My glove did get better, and that's the reason I played 11 years in the big leagues. But the bat, in the MLB, defense is great, but it only takes you so far. It's all about your bat. And so over time, I kind of became viewed as a light bat, easy out, when I had shown up to the big leagues as a big bat and an okay glove. This was just a constant middle grind for me. I would ride the highs and lows, and I call it the roller coaster, and I rode it all my career. Good game, I'm on top of the world. Bad game, down in the dumps. Repeat that over and over, and if anybody knows about the monotony of baseball, it can get in your head pretty quick. Mentally, I wasn't happy. Looking back, I was borderline depressed. I didn't know it at the time. But God used that. And I thank God for using that struggle, because He really got my attention. He used what meant the most to me, which was baseball and success, to redirect my gaze towards Him. The lesson He was teaching me was contentment is not found in what I'm doing on the field and how good I am at baseball. Contentment is found in the Lord and our relationship with Jesus. Enter Brittany. Thank God for my wife. She was one of the most on-fire people I'd ever met for God. She grew up in Peachtree City, Georgia. I grew up here in Atlanta, so naturally we met in Chicago. I knew in about 3 weeks I wanted to marry her. It took her more like a year and a half. Shocker. I was attracted to her faith and what she stood for. I always said I wanted somebody with a strong faith. And the irony on that was I wasn't truly practicing what I claimed to believe. My love for God was mostly words, not lifestyle. I talked the talk, I didn't walk the walk. Brittany's influence, and as we dated, she encouraged me to trust God with my worries, and there were many. She urged me to pray and depend on Him. My attitude, same as it always was stubborn. I said, I can do this myself. I don't need any help. My pride said, I'm strong enough, I'm good enough, I don't need any help with what I have. I've gotten to this point without God. But God slowly started to chip away at that pride and used Brittany's faith and words to crack my heart open. Around 2012, at Brittany's encouragement, I went back to chapel. I started going to chapel. I took a few years off, went back to chapel. It was led by Mickey Weston, who was the White Sox chaplain. We typically met Tuesdays or Wednesdays on a homestand, and we would meet for an hour and talk about the Word. And my initial approach was, if I show up, I'm probably going to get some more hits. I was kind of treating God like a good luck charm. But at those chapels, God started tearing down my walls, and I slowly let Him in. And I want to tell everybody, transformation is not overnight. What I'm about to tell you took about 3 years. Philippians 4, 6, and 7. Do not be anxious in anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. At the end of June, this chapel focused on that exact verse. I was in a slump, shocker, frustrated at the plate, and that day I probably repeated that verse 50 to 60 times throughout my day, going through it. And that night I had a great game. I smoked 3 line drives, hit them as hard as I possibly could, a couple of them frozen ropes to the warning track. All 3 were called. I went 0 for 3 that night. But I chose to keep my eyes on Jesus. I refused anxiety, where in the past I would totally cave in, and that night I wouldn't though, and I felt so at peace. Back up a little bit, Brittany, my wife, got asked to go on the Amazing Race. Don't ask me how. She also won the Showcase Showdown with Bob Barker on her 18th birthday. So that's a story for a different day, but she did that too. And before leaving for the Amazing Race, she made me a binder and put a card. She loves cards. Ladies love cards. She made a card for every day that she was gone. And in that card would have a printed message, her handwritten encouragement to me, and then a Bible verse. She came home around day 24. So as soon as when she came home, I stopped opening the cards, right? I had my encouragement right there. I didn't need to open any of the cards she made. And then randomly, that night that I had that game where I went 0 for 3 and I kept saying Philippians 4, 6, and 7 in my head, she was like, did you ever end up opening all my cards? And I'm like, no, you're here. Why would I do that? And she was like, you need to open my cards. I spent a lot of time on that, And I'm like, okay, I guess that I'll do that. Day 25, the day that I should have opened a week prior, I opened it up, and it was printed message, her encouragement, and then Philippians 4, 6, and 7. The card that I was supposed to open a week and a half ago and open Philippians 4, 6, and 7, God waited 1 week for me to open it and totally spoke to my heart on only I could know that, right? It was only a relationship that I could understand because I was having that internal conversation with him. And then all of a sudden he just puts a stamp on it and says, I'm trying to have a relationship with you. I'm longing for that relationship with you. And he started speaking clearly to me. Now, my relationship with God was growing, but baseball at this point was still primary. Success was still my ultimate goal. And God was still secondary to that performance. In 2013, I had an okay season, had surgery on my hand, had no power, but ended up hitting close to 270. In 2014, it was turning out to be my worst season yet. My love for baseball was gone, constantly beat down by the unmet expectations in Chicago. 5 years after pressure, 5 years of pressure in Chicago, it just totally beat me down. In August 2014, I was packing to go on a trip to New York to play the Yankees. Brittany had finally had enough. Thank God for Brittany. She said, when are you going to get your fire back? Where is your joy? You were a shell of yourself. And I was totally broken. And I just told her, I just need to leave Chicago. I need a new start. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep getting asked every day, when am I going to start turning it around? When's my back going to come around? I would go to charity events and people, instead of saying, hey, thanks for coming, they would say, when are you going to start hitting? And so Brittany, being the woman she was, she just started praying. And she prayed for about 10 minutes and asked God to change my situation for a new beginning, to change my circumstances. And she prayed and she prayed and she prayed. It's probably the longest prayer I've ever been a part of. We hug and we go back to packing. 5 minutes later, phone rings. Rick Hahn, GM of the White Sox, he says, I want to thank you for your time in Chicago. You've been traded to the Angels. I hang up the phone, I look at Brittany, I'm like, you're not going to believe this. God answered her prayer in less than 5 minutes. Wow. And to a team called the Angels. I know God doesn't always answer prayers that quickly, but he did that day. And in Anaheim, I played lights out. I'm a broadcaster, I'm supposed to know all these stats. OPS plus is a stat they use today. I was 118 OPS plus when I played in Anaheim, and I think league average is 100. I helped the Angels win the pennant. Do not be anxious in anything, but in everything by prayer petition, present your request to God. He hears those answers, and that's the verse that kept playing in my mind. Don't be anxious, he's got you. He changed my situation like that. God wasn't done with me in Chicago, though. He brought me back in 2015 to face all the demons that I had before. I signed a one-year deal with the White Sox, no longer the everyday second baseman, but still played 100 games that year. Stats were weak, similar as the years before. Production was similar to that of the years prior. But the purpose was less about baseball and more about my heart. Enter Adam LaRoche, teammate with strong Christian faith, played here in Atlanta. I know you guys all know him. We bonded over our love for the outdoors and hunting, and I followed Adam around all over the place, asking questions about faith and scripture. And he didn't have all the answers, but he listened, he answered some, and then sometimes we got on FaceTimes with the Robertsons of Duck Dynasty and had them answer some questions. I was like a toddler learning to walk spiritually, and Adam was kind of that guy that got me over the hump. But God used Brittany, Adam, and my chaplain, Mickey Weston, for 3 years to knock on the door of my heart, and I finally went all in. September 15th, 2015, Lake Michigan, I was baptized with the Chicago skyline in the background. In that off season, I read the entire New Testament. I dove into who Christ was, and I was on fire for the Lord. The momentum kept going when I signed with my hometown team in that off season, the Atlanta Braves.
Woo!
We weren't very good in 2016, but I was there, and I wore that jersey. I had great spring training. I was hot at the plate to start the year, killing the ball. Then I popped my hamstring two weeks into the season. I was trying to beat out an infield single, which is always stupid because I'm not that fast. I rehabbed and I was back in 2 weeks, probably a little too soon. Still raking when I got back, hitting the ball all over the place. 2 weeks later, I popped the same hamstring in the same spot. I was out for a month, but I made it back just in time to get up to Chicago and play my old team, the White Sox. I went 2 for 3 off my friend Chris Sale and hit a home run off Jose Quintana the next day. At the break, I was hitting .306 for the Atlanta Braves, my hometown team. I felt like I had turned a corner. And as you're probably going to understand, this roller coaster just keeps going up and down, up and down. After the All-Star break, I struggled really bad for about a month. Braves called up Dansby Swanson at the beginning of August, and that effectively rendered me useless. I sat the bench for the next 2 months, basically. And they essentially called him up to take my place. I went from the penthouse to the outhouse in about a month. Roller coaster, right? Up, down, riding. I was riding all these highs. But the funny thing is, God was starting to say, would you trust me even when the story didn't go the way you wanted? Remember, this is the first time I had actually put my faith in him in 2016. I want to rewind back to the fall of 2015, right after I'd gotten baptized. As I said, I like to deer hunt, okay? I bow hunt for white-tailed deer. And we had a deer named Reggie, and for any of you non-hunters out there, if you name a deer, it's a big deer, and you're also a redneck. You can call me a redneck. One mid-November morning, this deer that I had been hunting for 3 years finally shows up. Only problem was, the night before he had broke off half of his antlers. And I had been hunting this deer for 3 years. He had gotten in a fight with another deer, and that deer had broken off his antlers. That deer walked 10 yards in front of me broadside. And for any of you non-hunters out there, that means it's probably the easiest shot you could ever take with a bow and arrow. I hung my bow back up, I watched him walk by, and I sat down and I just started praying. I said, God, I don't know what you're teaching me because I know you know the desires of my heart. But that was a desire of my heart, and I don't know what you're teaching me, but I trust you, especially when I don't understand. A lot of times when we say I trust you, I think God turns around and says, we'll see. So fast forward 10 months, right? I'm going through all this stuff with the Braves. September 15th, 2016, exactly 1 year to the day after my baptism in Lake Michigan. That was our only off day for the Braves that I could potentially go down and hunt deer before the end of the season. So my dad and I packed up, we went down to South Georgia, and that day I harvested a deer that I called Reggie. Driving back the next day, I looked at my dad and I said, you're not going to believe this. I harvested that deer a year to the day that I got baptized in Lake Michigan. And then I remembered the prayer that I had said the year before in that deer stand. And the lesson was God tested my trust and then rewarded me 1 year to the day so that he could put a stamp on our relationship and my relationship with God. It was perfect timing, which only God could script. And that script that he wrote was tailored directly to me, as it always is, and my heart. No one else could have made the connection because God knew how to connect directly to me. These stories, the one about the amazing race cars, the trade to the angels, and this deer that I harvested, these are the pillars of my testimony. But without a walk with God, these are just random moments. And I would just urge you to put on your spiritual lenses and see what God is doing in your heart and in your life, because if you do that, he actually starts to show up. His fingerprints are all over the place, and the only way you can do that is being in the Word of God and talking to him intimately. A few weeks after I harvested that deer, I got traded at the end of the year, and now they can't even trade this late in the season because of this trade. But I got traded to the Giants, San Francisco Giants, with 1 week left in the season. Still 2016, and I was able to reconnect with my good friend Buster Posey. He approached me after a few days of me being in the locker room, and he said, "What happened to you? You're different." The kid he remembered was cocky, a womanizer, hot-headed, and the man he met was different in spirit, calmer, more grounded, completely changed. When I got baptized, before I got baptized, I cussed like a sailor. Cussed all the time. Profanity left and right. I used it as kind of a crutch to be funnier. But as soon as I got baptized, that cleaned up in an instant. Luke 6:45. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. God removed selfishness, fame, obsession, success, obsession, and replaced it with love and a desire to honor him. And I would just ask you guys, what's your heart full of? Do you see Christ in you when you're talking to other people every day? That was a big change in my life after I got baptized. The story didn't end there. Roller coaster continued, right? I went back to the minors. Signed with the Seattle Mariners, and I became a Tacoma Rainier. My teammates called me Salt Lake City because of my disdain for being back in the minor leagues. You would be a little salty too, though, if you had to get up at 2 a.m. in the morning to take a bus to SeaTac so that you could get there at 3 and check in for the 4:30 a.m. flight where you took to Salt Lake City to get on another flight to fly to Albuquerque and then play that night. You would be salty. When I first walked in to the minor league clubhouse, I had 2 teammates come up to me separately. One guy said, "What are you doing here? Haven't you played 7 years in the MLB?" Another guy came up to me and goes, "This is hilarious. You're like the Benjamin Button of baseball. You're doing all this backwards." I did laugh pretty hard at that one. I was 30 years old, and it was going to be my first full season in the minors. The environment was a lot of young players, a lot of kids, and 2017 was more of the same production. Not that great. And I kept being stubborn about my abilities, thinking they were still up to par and should be in the big leagues. And after that 2017 season, I said, I got to make some changes. So, and going into the 2018 season, I worked very heavily with my father-in-law, who's a former big league hitting coach, and he also had a 15-year MLB career. We put in some serious mechanical work. In 2018, I spent more than half the season in the minors that year too. But I learned how to love the game again. There were no bright lights, no expectations on me. It was just me playing baseball, trying to figure it out. The result, OPS around 860, which is really good, and I hit the absolute daylights out of the ball. That season set me up to sign with the Detroit Tigers on a minor league deal in 2019. I signed that minor league deal, and a week in, the Tigers signed a guy named Josh Harrison to a major league deal. This move essentially made me irrelevant. Totally irrelevant on paper. But I remember Philippians 4. Don't be anxious. I chose not to be anxious. I decided to be who God made me to be. Play free, trust God with the results, right? Despite the front office decision to sign Josh Harrison. I made the team out of spring training. I later learned from my agent that when they signed Josh Harrison, the GM had called my agent and said, Gordon's not going to make the team. That call happened over a month before the spring training had even ended. I put my trust in God, and he put me on a team I wasn't supposed to be on. The first month, I was playing really well. I saw a stat at the beginning of May, and it said, average exit velocity in the big leagues. Number 1 was Aaron Judge. Number 2 was me. Going great until I slid into second base when I tried to steal about mid-May, and I popped something in my shoulder, underneath my shoulder blade in my back. After that, every sprint and every throw felt like a guitar string had broke every time I strummed it. I avoided the injury list because I knew if I got on the injured list, they would probably release me as soon as I got off of it. So I played completely hurt for about 3 weeks. My production plummeted. I went from playing 4 to 5 days a week to once a week. But still, I stayed on the team for the entire year. But what I'm about to tell you, maybe they should have cut me. 47 and 114. That was the Tigers' record that year. Good enough for 8th worst in MLB history. Early in the season, we played about 500 baseball. So through the first 50 games, we were like 25 and 25. That means we ended the season 22 and 89. Mentally, it was the hardest year of my career. Many of the starters never played again in the big leagues. There were a lot of young kids, they were just trying to figure out if they could play. They couldn't. My role was to mentor those young players and keep the clubhouse morale up. I'd crack jokes, encourage, teach, pastor. In reality, it's tough when you're losing every night. But I knew that God had put me there for a reason, to be a light to these kids. After that, retirement. COVID year. I started with San Diego during COVID. We disbanded, went up to New York. The Mets wanted me to continue my career and go to Brooklyn. And the thought process of me sitting in Brooklyn waiting for somebody to get hurt or sick with a newborn child, Jed, my firstborn, and my wife, didn't sound too appealing. So I decided that I would step away from baseball. The game had become more of a job. It wasn't much of a joy anymore. And I was last guy on the roster and first guy off. I had peace about it though, and everything I did, and I decided to retire. And I've spent a lot of time telling you guys how mediocre I was. But the reality is God blessed me with a tremendous talent and work ethic that propelled me to be one of the top infielders in the world for about 5 to 6 years. I recently was up in New York and I spent some time with Aaron Judge. And the first thing he said to me, he said, "You're an absolute legend." I don't know why he thinks that, but I didn't ask any questions. And my ego is good for the next 10 years. In total games, I played over 1,000 MLB games and accrued just under 10 years of service time. That time in the big leagues puts me in the top 5% of players that ever suited up in the big leagues in the history of the game. I played in 2 of 24 perfect games. I was teammates with Mike Trout, Ichiro Suzuki, Albert Pujols, Jim Thome, Buster Posey, Andrew Jones, Manny Ramirez, and I was locker mates with Miguel Cabrera in Detroit. I faced Verlander, Pettit, Rivera, Chapman, and many others, and had some level of success against many of them. I played against Ken Griffey Jr., Alex Rodriguez, and Chipper Jones. I've been number 1 on SportsCenter Top 10 Plays, and I've been on the not top 10 plays of the year. I'll never forget sitting right after Christmas watching the not top 10 plays of the year, and all of a sudden, here I come, number 6. There was a pop-up in the infield, and like I said, I was a good defender, so I was like, I'm the only guy that can catch this. And that last thought is what doomed me. I decided to tackle the third baseman and the pitcher, and in doing so, the ball dropped, and the tying run scored. And that was the number 6, not top 10 play of the year. We actually won the game, but it felt like a loss. I've hit game-winning home runs in Yankee Stadium. I struck out with the bases loaded at the end of the game. I took more hits away defensively from Derek Jeter than he cares to remember. But in reality, I'm going to be a footnote in baseball history. And so will most of those names that I just mentioned one day. The eternal scoreboard, success in Christ, dwarfs anything that we ever do on the field. I'm not sure who I would be today if I had had the success that I had early in in my career. The roller coaster of my career has gotten me to the point where I am. And I'd like to say that I would have gotten to this point where I put all my trust in Christ, but I'm not sure. I thank God for that roller coaster. And we've hit a home run, pun completely intended, in Jesus. Speaking to those people here that are far from God or those who are unsure on the fence, I grew up in a Christian family. It was front and center, and it still took me 3 years as an adult of asking questions, getting signs, and wrestling before I finally committed. God's character is patient, faithful, and steady. He doesn't ride the roller coaster like we do. He's constant and unwavering. He waits with open arms for us to come home. And I hope you lean on him like a rock in your own roller coaster. I'm going to leave you with this. A few years ago, my son Jet, he was just transitioning to his big boy bed. One particular Sunday morning, I just finished my quiet time with God, and I went upstairs to get Jet. I opened the door, and he was sitting on the corner of the bed, feet on the floor, his little low bed. Huge smile, grinning from ear to ear. I could tell that he had been waiting there for a while, patiently expecting his father to come. In that moment, God showed me a picture of what a father-son relationship is meant to be. Jet knew that I would walk through that door. He could trust me to come. Parallel that relationship with the God the Father. He waits for us, he anticipates us turning to him, and he has joy when we open the door. Jet's face almost said, "I've been waiting on you. I knew you'd come." That's God's heart towards us. I've been waiting on you. I knew you'd come. All we have to do is open the door. Thank you.
I think we've got time for a question or two if anybody has one. You don't often get to talk to MLB players. Anybody got something they'd like to ask? Yeah, go ahead.
Your perspective on that guy on the Dodgers that seemed to do it.
Ohtani?
Yes.
You're looking at a unicorn. You'll never see it again. I think he's the best player to ever play the game of baseball. I mean, they're like, well, Babe Ruth did it. Babe Ruth didn't do what this guy's doing. I mean, and especially not against what's thrown in the big leagues. I mean, the big league game right now, I mean, especially from when I started to when I ended, the amount of stuff, meaning like the pitchers, what they have, is crazy. We used to say, get the starter out, get to the bullpen. Now it's like, keep the starter in just long enough where you can get a couple here and there, and then in the fifth inning you get like a knockout punch. Meaning the pitching's really good. That's why people don't hit much anymore. But he's one of the best pitchers in the big leagues. He's the best hitter.
Do the other players you've talked to say the same thing?
I didn't need to ask. You'll never. I don't know if you'll ever see somebody hit like he does pitch ever again. You might never see. I mean, I won't see it probably in my lifetime.
How cold is Lake Michigan in September?
It's chilly. It's chilly. That was a cool moment though. It's kind of full circle. You know, it kind of killed the demons that were always riding around in my head. But that was a lot of fun.
Amen, brother.
Who do you consider the best pitcher you faced?
Yeah, people ask me this all the time, and my go-to answer is, at the end of my career, anybody that came out of the bullpen. I mean, we played. I was with the White Sox a lot, and we played Detroit, and their starting five was Scherzer, Verlander, Porcello, Anibal Sanchez, and then they had Doug Fister, who was the fifth starter, and he was as nasty as any of them. I mean, Verlander was good. Scherzer I took Verlander deep, so I'm like, he's not as good as Scherzer. Scherzer was really good, and then you've got the guy for Washington, Strasburg was unbelievable. I faced him the second game he came to the big leagues. I faced Yu Darvish the day he came into the big leagues, his opening start in the big leagues, and that was in Texas. And if y'all remember the song Soldier Boy, when they says you, you know, like I don't know if y'all remember that. He came out to that, and his name is You, and that's how, you know, the song starts. And I'm telling you, it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen, but the whole stadium was rocking. I mean, it was like the second day of the season, so it was pretty cool.
You mentioned hunting a lot.
Yeah.
You also mentioned shepherd again. You ever been able to get a stand shepherd?
Actually, the buck that I harvested was put on Major League Bow Hunter. So I actually got that on film. You can actually watch that.
What do you think is your greatest non-baseball gift that God gave you?
I think God gave me the gift to do what I'm doing right now, talk. You know, I do broadcasting. I call games for the White Sox. I do some commentary for the Braves. But I think that the ability to talk and connect with people like you guys at the top of your industry, and also connect with somebody that's from Costa Rica and has, you know, nothing. I think he allowed me to kind of be able to, and that was the beauty of baseball, is I got to interact with all kinds.
Yeah, a lot of us in business, we witness to the people we work with.
Yeah.
Trying to live Christ. We're some of those people he led, and those great moments that you had with them, and you still witness them today and help them along their journey.
Yeah, I think, you know, at the end of my career was kind of when I was all in for Christ. So you don't always see, you know, the seeds that you plant along the way, you know, and you just hope that something you say or somebody that sees something that you do, for me, if down the road they come to Christ, or if there's something like that, I think that's the big win. You know, I mean, mentoring at a baseball field is just an everyday thing. I mean, it's like the schedule's insane. So you're around these people all the time. I mean, and I know everybody works with people, but you go home. I feel like with the baseball locker room, it's like you're around them for every day for 7.5 months. It's just nonstop. But yeah, I think that I hope that I've impacted some people along the way.
Salary cap. What do you think about MLB adopting that?
Sadly, I think that there's going to be a lockout. I've talked to 3 owners, and every one of them says they're going to lock the players out already, and it's a year away from bargaining, which is really, really sad. I think that you're never going to, the players are not going to bite on the salary cap, because it's just kind of the last thing that they have. Do I think that it would be better for the game? I don't really know. I mean, there's some teams that have a small salary throughout their whole team, and they're in the playoffs. So, you know, I know the Dodgers have done well, but like there are teams that are making runs that aren't the Dodgers. And I mean, I don't know.
Who's the most colorful character that you met in the big leagues that you like to talk about, that's has the most stories about?
I mean, there's plenty of colorful characters. I mean, you know, he played here. AJ Przinsky's kind of one of those guys. He's kind of the guy that you love if you're on his team, and you hate if you're not playing him. But you know, there's so many. I mean, in terms of a baseball season, you kind of have to have either the mentality of I'm going to be a character, or I am just like steady Eddie. There's not really any in between. You go crazy after 7.5 months, especially as a hitter. You know, failing 7 out of 10 times and you're considered good is just the weirdest thing ever invented. I mean, and that's partly why I struggled so much, because I went to Westminster. I'm around all these geniuses. I grew up in all this in this environment where failing is impossible. Like, you can't fail. And then all of a sudden you take that mentality to baseball, it's the exact opposite. You got to be totally okay. You got to be kind of crazy about the fact that you're going to fail 7 out of 10 times. You're going to be considered good. And then you got to do it in front of people too. You know, so it's yeah.
All right, one more.
When do players work out during the season?
During the season, we've got in the locker room, they've got a full weight room and gym.
Well, do you do it during the day of a game? I mean,
Yeah.
it's so busy.
Yeah, so, you know, a lot of people ask, like, what's a day like? A day in the big leagues, I would get there for a 7 o'clock game at 1 o'clock. I would start my workout then. I'd go into the cage, hit, get ready for BP, go to BP, hit, take ground balls, come back in. have a routine about an hour before the game, go play. Game took, back then, it took 3.5 hours. We'd get home around 11:30 or midnight, spend an hour with your wife, go to bed at 1 o'clock or 2 a.m., wake up at 11 a.m. and do it all over again. That's what really, you know, it sounds awesome, but I'm telling you right now, I look back at my career and I'm like, I can't believe I even got through it. Like, I mean, like the schedule is so ridiculous and so monotonous that, like, I look back and I'm like, people are like, do you miss it? I'm like, no, I don't miss it at all, because that was every day. And if you didn't perform, you know, it's not, you had nowhere to hide. And you're showing right back up the next day to go, you know, put it all on the line. So you had to have a, you know, you needed to think like a goldfish. I didn't do that very well, but.
Boy, the last question right here.
Baseball players practice when they mean by the garden. What'd you do like after you quit? Like, how'd you feel the void?
I had somebody that was hilarious. I was working with Clayton Edwards, and we were doing some multifamily acquisitions, and we were getting a property management company to come and see if they wanted to manage their office space or get it leased or something like that. And the kid asked me, he goes, "So what are you doing now? Are you on like a rec team?" I'm like, "A rec team?" I'm like, oh my God, like, you know, this guy has no idea. Like, yeah, I'm out there playing rec baseball. What did I, sorry, the question is, what did I do after I got done playing? Well, I started working. I mean, I did that pretty quick. Like, I'm not one that, you know, I didn't make enough money to just sit around and, you know, just sit for the next 5 months, or five years, and I wouldn't have done that anyways. I think that, you know, I feel like being active and getting after something else. I mean, my goal is to do something great after baseball. I don't want to just be known as a baseball player. I want to do something afterwards. But I mean, filling my time. I've got 2 young kids. That fills a lot of time right now. But I love the outdoors. But other than that, just trying to find my way post baseball career in the business world. Yeah.
All right, Jeff is, yeah, it's my boss, sorry.
I'm good. I'm good. I've got time.
Well, I just got a quick question really about kind of reaching the next generation. You're in broadcasting, and you know, one thing that happened after COVID is when people stopped getting together. You know, I see this next generation spends more time on their phones than they do, you know, getting together and doing fun things with their friends. And you start thinking about mentoring, you start thinking about how do you reach them for Christ. You know, from your perspective, do you have any ideas or thoughts on how you're seeing the world today, and as you're in your role, you know, what would be advice for us as far as with connecting with this next generation?
I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but for me, like, the outdoors is how I connect with God. Excuse me. It's how I connect with my earthly father. So I feel like, to your point, everybody's on their phone. And in the outdoors, we have an opportunity to not do that. So I've always had a dream of having a place where, you know, people can go hunt, have a father-son team, and you take them all weekend, you have some programming, and you do that on a certain piece of land. There's so many logistical nightmares with that, but I think it'd be awesome to be able to get fathers and sons to be able to connect in the outdoors like that. I don't have a full plan on that yet. It's half-baked, but I think the outdoors, and that's honestly why I got into one of the reasons I got into broadcasting. I told Buster Posey that, is I said, you know, maybe I can be in broadcasting and just connect with somebody on the audience that says, like, what does he have that I'm missing? Because that moment when I had everything, and I was Rookie of the Year, and everything was going great, I still felt empty until I had Christ. And so that's my goal. If I'm going to be on the broadcast, I want to be confident, but I also want people to be like, hey, I like what he's about. What is he about? Maybe they look me up, and maybe they'll see this one day.
Wow. And so many